Oh, cheer, kia ora, bro. How's it going, eh? Sorry, this episode is late, everyone. I'm down under in New Zealand, visiting my girlfriend's family and having a holiday and that, but didn't want to leave yous without your weekly fix of Carousel Sniper Victim. So I've been doing it here while I'm on holiday, but it's a bit slow because, been drunk and doing other stuff, but it's here, it's done. Sorry it's late, but enjoy.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You're listening to Carousel Sniper Victim, a Dead Glass Design production, with your host, Shaun Jeffery.
All cities shout with custom of fell deed, and Caesar's spirit, raging for revenge with Arte by his side, come hot from hell, shall in these confines with a monarch waste by heaven, and let slip the gods of war.
Imagine this. You're in a water-filled, rat-infested hole in the ground, in some godforsaken foreign land. You're in a trench. It's World War I. Surrounded by the bodies of your fallen comrades, it's the bloody madness of the Great War. Incomprehensible noise, explosions, chlorine gas fills the sky. Imagine artillery shells raining down all around you. The world to date has never experienced warfare like this. You're part of what would become known as the Lost Battalion, and your only hope is a pigeon. Your life, as well as the lives of the 194 men that are left around you, depend on this little feathered friend. And a friend in need is a friend indeed. Cut off from the outside world, the only chance you and your mates have is that this little pigeon delivers an invaluable message back to your commanding officers. In the height of warfare, the ability to communicate is essential to soldiers in the field. Without a means of effective communication to their commanders or support units, soldiers on the front lines can't send messages about their progress, request needed supplies, or call for help when things reach their worst, like they have right now. During World War I, messages were sometimes transmitted by wire, telegraph, or field phone, but at the time of the Great War, two-way radio communications had not yet become available. Sometimes a unit was ordered to attack over a broad and often difficult terrain, making it impossible to string the wires necessary for communications. Things could quickly go awry from the desired initial plan of attack. In these situations, a field commander often carried with him several carrier pigeons. Pigeons served many purposes during the war, racing through the skies with airplanes, or even being fitted with cameras to take pictures of enemy positions. But one of the most important roles they served was as messengers. An important message could be written on a piece of paper, then that paper neatly folded and secured in a small canister attached to a pigeon's leg. Once the pigeon was released, fly to its home back behind the forward lines, where the message would be read and transmitted to the proper military planners. When the United States entered World War I in 1917, the Army Signal Corps, which was the branch of the Army responsible for communicating between the various divisions of the armed forces, was given 600 pigeons for the purpose of passing messages when it couldn't be done by signal flag or field phone. The pigeons were donated by bird breeders in Great Britain, then trained for their jobs by American soldiers. During the Argonne Offensive, the 2-month battle that finally ended World War I, 442 pigeons were used in the area of Verdun to carry hundreds of messages. This is how the system worked. When a commander in the field needed to send a message, he first wrote it on a piece of paper, trying to be both brief and yet as detailed as possible. Then he called for one of his Signal Corps officers, who would bring one of the pigeons that went with the soldiers into battle. The message would be put into the silver capsule on the bird's leg, and the bird would be tossed high into the air to fly home. The carrier pigeon would fly back to his home coop behind the lines. When he landed, the wires in the coop would sound a bell or buzzer, and another soldier of the Signal Corps would know a message had arrived. He would quickly go to the coop, remove the message from the canister, and then send it by telegraph, field phone, or personal messenger to the right persons. Carrier pigeons did an important job. It was also a very dangerous job. If the enemy soldiers were nearby when a pigeon was released, they knew that the bird would be carrying important messages, and tried their best to shoot the pigeon down so the messages couldn't be delivered. Specific groups of soldiers were even issued birdshot guns that would spray pellets over a large area of the sky in an attempt to bring down the messenger birds. Some of these pigeons became quite famous. They would soar above the forests of the Verdun and Argonne battlefields, delivering vital logistical information and saving countless lives. Though labelled a, quote, forest, the Argonne region could probably be more appropriately called the jungle. Stretching from the Belgian frontier to Verdun, it comprises a region of northern France about 44 miles long, with an average width of 10 miles. Elevations average over 1,000 feet, but this average is difficult to compute because the area is ruggedly laid out in a series of deep valleys and sheer cliffs that rise to become high mountains. The entire region is heavily forested over a blanket of dense brush. It's some gnarly, mountainous and dense country. Throughout 3 years of warfare, German forces had supplemented the natural barrier of the Argonne with elaborate concrete and steel bunkers, some so advanced as to contain electricity and modern furnishings. Machine gun emplacements had been built up with concrete and timber to withstand the most formidable of assaults, then carefully camouflaged to enable them to catch any advancing foe by surprise. The valleys and ravines were strewn with barbed wire, logs and other man-made obstacles. When the spring offensive failed, the German forces were able to retreat to an area in which only a foolish enemy would dare to advance. So back to this shitty hellhole you're sitting in. It's October the 4th, 1918. Deep into the last stages of the Argonne Offensive, there has been heavy, intense fighting for weeks. Hundreds of men are dead and dying around you. You're part of what would later become known as the Lost Battalion. Cut off from reinforcements and running dangerously low on ammunition, the enemy is closing in. The only hope, a little pigeon named Cher Ami, French for dear friend. The commanding officer of this Lost Battalion is one Mr. Charles Whittlesey. Mr. Charles Whittlesey was a lawyer in New York, but when the United States called for soldiers to help France regain its freedom, Whittlesey joined the army and went to Europe to help. He was made the commander of a battalion of soldiers in the 77th Infantry Division, known as the Liberty Division, because most of the men came from New York and wore a bright blue patch on their shoulders that had on it the Statue of Liberty. The Liberty Division was one of the first army divisions to arrive in France in the quest to shine the light of the torch of liberty in war-torn Europe. On October the 3rd, 1918, Major Whittlesey and more than 500 men were trapped in a small depression on the side of the hill, surrounded by enemy soldiers. Many were killed and wounded in the first day. By the second day of the offensive, October 4th, only a little more than 200 men were still alive or unwounded. 300 were dead. This is where the adventure with the little pigeon Cher Ami begins. Major Whittlesey sent out several pigeons to tell his commanders where he was and how bad the situation is. Little more than 200 men were still alive from his original 500. They needed help, but they were cut off. Help wouldn't be coming unless they could get a message out, and fast. The pigeon carrying the first message, "Many wounded, we cannot evacuate," was shot down. Not good. A second bird was sent with the message, "Men are suffering, can support be sent?" That pigeon also was shot down. Even worse. Then a third pigeon is sent out. However, the message contained incorrect coordinates to headquarters, resulting in a barrage of artillery targeting their own battalion. So now not only being shot at by the German soldiers, the enemy, now the lost battalion is being shelled by their own men. Definitely not an ideal situation. During the afternoon, the American artillery fired hundreds of big artillery rounds into the ravine where the Germans surrounded Major Whittlesey and his men. Unfortunately, the American commanders didn't know exactly where the American soldiers were, and the shells started dropping right on top of them. It was a horrible situation that could easily result in Major Whittlesey and all of his men being killed by their own army. Major Whittlesey called for his last pigeon, Cher Ami. He wrote a quick and simple note scribbled onto a piece of onion paper, telling the men who directed the artillery guns where the Americans were located and asking them to stop. The note that was put into the canister on Cher Ami's left leg simply said, quote, "We are along the road parallel to 276.4. Our own artillery is dropping a barrage directly on us. For heaven's sake, stop it." The message was sealed into the little canister on the pigeon's leg, and, with the hopes of 194 soldiers resting on the pigeon's feathered breast, the bird was thrown into the sky. As Cher Ami climbed into the scorched sky above the fields of Verdun, the Germans saw her rising out of the brush and immediately opened fire. For several minutes, bullets ripped through the air all around the little bird. It looked like the little pigeon was going to fall, that she wasn't going to make it. The doomed American infantrymen were crushed. Their last hope was plummeting to earth against a very heavy attack from German bullets. After several seconds, she was shot down. Yet somehow, Cher Ami managed to spread her wings and start climbing into the bullet-riddled sky again. Higher and higher she quickly rose until she was beyond the range of the enemy guns and soared into the distance. But would she make it? Meanwhile, in the crater-marked ground on the hillside of the Verdun battlefield, the 194 soldiers of the lost battalion could only wait, hope and pray that their little winged messenger could do her duty and deliver their salvation. Suddenly, the shelling stopped. The little bird had managed to fly 25 miles or 40 kilometers in under 30 minutes. She flew through a veritable hellstorm of American and German artillery shells and small arms gunfire to deliver the vital message. The little pigeon had done it. More than 200 American soldiers' lives were saved, all because the little bird, dear friend, French Cher Ami, would never quit trying. Even though she was amazingly successful, this would be Cher Ami's last mission. Our dear friend was badly wounded when she finally fluttered back to the signal station, her home, and reached her coop that she was so well trained to find. She could fly no longer. The soldier that answered the sound of the bell, the sound signalling a return messenger, found the little bird laying on her back, covered in blood. Our dear friend was in very bad shape. Cher Ami had been blinded in one eye, and a bullet had hit her breastbone. Hanging by just a few tendons was the almost completely severed leg of the brave little bird. Attached to that leg was the silver canister, with the all-important message. Once again, Cher Ami wouldn't quit until she had finished her job. Cher Ami became the hero of the 77th Infantry Division, and the Army field medics worked long and hard to patch her up. When the French soldiers that the Americans were fighting to help learned the story of Cher Ami's bravery and determination, they gave her one of their own country's greatest honours. Cher Ami, dear friend, the brave carrier pigeon, was presented with a medal the French called the Croix de Guerre, with a palm leaf, basically a medal of honour and bravery. Though the dedicated medics did save Cher Ami's life, they couldn't save her leg. The men of the division were careful to take care of the little bird that had saved 200 of their friends, and so carved a small wooden leg for her. When Cher Ami was well enough to travel, the little one-legged hero was put on a boat bound for the United States. The commander of all of the United States Army, General John J. Pershing, personally saw Cher Ami off as she departed France. This little bird had done her duty. Back in the United States, the story of Cher Ami was told again and again. The little bird was in the newspapers, magazines, and it seemed that everyone knew her name. She became one of the most famous heroes of World War I. Since long before the Great War, though, animals and humans have fought side by side. Since we first selectively bred wolves into dogs, they have been used as sentries and to guard our families. The Nazi betrayal of the Soviets during World War II caught the Russians completely off guard. In a desperate attempt at staving off the Nazi advance into their territory, the Soviets originally attempted to train dogs to place bombs in front of tanks before running back to safety. When this proved too difficult a feat for training, the Soviets instead began strapping bombs to dogs that were activated by a small lever, rising from an attached pouch on the dog's side. When the dog would dive under a tank, the lever would strike the tank's chassis and detonate. Soviet propaganda claims that around 300 German tanks were destroyed in this manner, so that's 300 dogs. However, the majority of the program proved to be a failure. The dogs were trained on Soviet diesel tanks instead of German gasoline tanks. So during deployment, the dogs had a habit of running towards Soviet vehicles based on the scent. The anti-tank dog program continued until 1996. From little doggos to enormous elephants with their massive stature and fearsome tusks, elephants have been employed in warfare since ancient times. Elephantry units were first incorporated in militaries in India, but throughout time, famous generals including Pyrrhus of Epirus, Hannibal, and Alexander the Great all used elephants to literally crush their opponents. War elephants were usually deployed in the centre of the forward line, where the imposing beasts would charge at up to 20 miles or 32 kilometers an hour towards the enemy. They were also used to carry heavy materials across difficult terrain before tanks and helicopters were even an option. Unlike horse-mounted cavalry, elephants didn't fear infantry lines bearing spears. Their muscular and articulate trunks could navigate a wall of spears much better than any charging horse. The mere sight of elephants charging was enough to break lines and cause many armies to flee in terror. Only cannon fire made the war elephants impractical. The giant animals were resilient against musket fire, but provided a huge target for cannons. Off the battlefield, militaries still found ways to make use of elephants. As recently as 1987, Iraqi troops allegedly used elephants to transport heavy weaponry for use in Kirkuk. Elephants for the longest time seemed unstoppable, until we started to adopt the use of war pigs. Pigs would be covered in pitch and tar and set alight before being turned loose towards the approaching elephants. This would result in the elephants often turning and stampeding through their own lines of their own armies. Up until the wars in the Middle East recently, elephants were still being used to transport heavy weaponry and even mounted with high-caliber machine guns. It also wasn't just full frontal assaults that animals were used for. We've used animals for covert espionage as well. The acoustic kitty was a CIA project in the 1960s that set out to use cats to spy on the Kremlin and other Soviet embassies. Cats used in the project had microphones implanted in their ear canals and radio transmitters in the base of their skulls. In theory, the cats would become mobile, albeit unpredictable little spies reporting immediately back to the CIA. In the first deployment of an acoustic kitty, the cat was unleashed around a Soviet compound in Washington, D.C. The cat was released nearby, but a taxi struck and killed the cat almost immediately. Predictably, the CIA abandoned the project due to the difficulty of getting a cat to do pretty much anything on command. They're good like that. The project reportedly cost the CIA around $20 million. Loyal as they are, we should remember that they don't volunteer. We might call them heroes and brave, but we would do well to remember that the only reason the animals are fighting in the first place is because humans fight wars. And we force animals in to do our dirty work. We just better hope they don't wise up and go Planet of the Apes on us if we train them too well.
I did not start this war, but we will finish it.
far upon a lonely eider down, while I dream of rats and tar within my burrow in the ground. Infernal gaping scar of boiling mud and thundering sound, they won't sing of this forsaken pawn of war. Hoist the flags, hold the lines, lessons ever lost to time. Now we sing for you, departed bonds of war. Death on the dunes, we feed the deserts. Blood of the empires on the sand. Hoist the flags, hold the lines, lessons ever lost to time. Now we sing for you, departed bonds of war. Hoist the flags, hold the lines, lessons ever lost to time. Now we